And again, I'm just going to do a very brief welcome and introduction.
We are live.
Less than a minute. I'm sorry?
We are live.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. That's what live Zoom is. Welcome. My name is Tom Pike. I am Congressman Khanna's district director, and welcome to Worker Cooperatives, an alternative business model in the COVID economy and beyond. This will be a fast-paced hour that will include plenty of time for questions. So let's get going. Up front, I did want to let everyone know that many local and state representatives are listening in today. That includes all 7 cities from our congressional district, Santa Clara County Supervisor's offices, Assemblymember Kansan Chu, State Senator Bobukowski's office, and some others. So they're getting the benefit of the conversation, as well as small business owners and those interested. The point being that your community's local, state, and federal representatives are all engaged in this. Let me just briefly introduce the panelists. We have Assemblymember Kalra. Hello, Ash. Mayor Lisa Gillmor of Santa Clara. Zen Trenholm of Democracy at Work Institute. Kirk Vartan, a worker owner at A Slice of New York. Hilary Abell of Project Equity. And with opening remarks, your host, Representative Ro Khanna. Ro?
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you for your leadership and Kevin Fox on my team, who has really spearheaded this effort, and so many people on this call. I'm grateful to all of our participants who really have driven this process. I am really excited that we're going to be introducing, thanks to the leadership of Santa Clara and our district, a workers cooperative bill. We know that the silver tsunami is coming. We know that a lot of boomers are going to retire. We know that many of them have small businesses and are going to be transitioning those businesses. And in some cases, their kids don't want to do the business that they did. And so the bill that we're going to introduce is going to create incentives for businesses to be sold to workers, for more of them to become the worker cooperatives like we have in Santa Clara and other parts of the district. It's going to provide more funding for education. I mean, a lot of people, I know everyone knows about the pizza place in Santa Clara, but a lot of people don't know about the worker cooperatives across the district or a country. So we need to educate people about why this is a good model. We need to let people know that it allows for profitability, yet it allows for higher worker wages. And this is going to be the first strong bill of its kind for encouraging worker cooperatives. I think it's a win-win. It's pro-economic growth, it's pro-business, and it's pro-worker. It's giving workers a real stake in our economy. And we need that. I mean, frankly, we need that given the cost of living in our area, given that worker wages have been flat. Imagine workers having real equity in the businesses that they are part of. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone on this call, and am really excited about introducing this legislation.
Great, and next up is going to be Zen Trenholm of Democracy at Work Institute.
Great, thank you. Okay. Fantastic. So just, thank you, Representative Ro Khanna, and thank you to the district office for organizing this session. I'm Zen Trenholm. I live in smoky Portland, Oregon, and I'm the program manager at the Democracy at Work Institute. We were founded by the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives to expand the field of worker cooperative development to reach communities of color, low-wage workforces, and recent immigrants. I also manage our SEED Fellowship program, where I support cities to develop employee ownership initiatives that meet the needs of their communities. I'm going to introduce worker ownership, why it is a strategy to tackle the succession crisis, and what support currently looks like around the country. So first, what is a worker cooperative? So it's a business owned and controlled by the people who work in it. It's a way for groups of people to meet their shared needs and desires, and they're just one of several forms of cooperatives, such as consumer and producer co-ops. What makes a worker cooperative unique amongst cooperative forms is that membership is based on employment, not purchasing or use of services. And employee ownership comes in various forms depending on the size and needs of the business. Generally speaking, worker cooperatives have lower costs and are better suited to smaller companies, whereas employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs, have higher costs and are better suited to larger companies. Both have beneficial federal tax treatment, which can reduce corporate tax to zero if a company passes through profits into employee equity accounts. So how do they work? In essence, worker ownership means workers have financial equity in the business that gives them real risk and reward. Worker cooperatives typically sell one membership share to each employee, which entitles them to rights of participation, information, and financial reward. At the governance level, members vote for and are eligible to serve on the cooperative's board of directors. This gives workers a structural ability to voice their desires and create the working conditions that meet their needs. Cooperative governance is distinct from management, which can take many different forms, traditional to participatory to fully collective. And that's generally adapted to the size, industry, and business needs of the co-op. So what are the benefits of worker ownership? So compared to traditional companies, cooperatives are resilient, they show higher productivity and longevity, particularly during downturns. They boost both profits and worker wages, particularly for workers in low-wage industries. They build wealth, they build skills and leadership among workers that traditionally have limited access to that opportunity. And finally, they create and retain jobs that are high quality and locally rooted. So the landscape of support for worker cooperatives has grown tremendously over the last 5 to 10 years as more cities and organizations look to employee ownership as a vehicle to improve conditions for their constituencies. In places like Cleveland, employee ownership is used to tackle our nation's widening racial wealth gap by providing a means for workers to build assets through ownership. In places like Boston, the focus is on creating worker cooperatives for recent immigrants locked out of the job market by helping them start businesses on their own terms. And increasingly, cities and counties around the country are looking to employee ownership to save businesses from preventable closures due to owner retirement. This is what we're focusing on today. So I just want to take a moment to build on what Representative Ro Khanna shared earlier, which is that with the overlapping crises of a COVID recession and what's being dubbed the silver tsunami, we are at risk of losing many of our small businesses. The majority of small businesses in this country are owned by baby boomers, and according to national surveys, close to 80% of owners want to retire within 10 years, and about a third in less than 3 years. However, less than 15% of businesses successfully transition to family members, and only about 20% of commercial listings actually sell. And so compounding an already urgent succession crisis, a recent small business majority survey of their members found that without additional support, more than a quarter of current small business owners will not survive past the next 3 months. So business owners are being forced into choices that will devastate local economies. Some may sell to large corporate competitors or private equity that will consolidate and downsize, while others may just retire and close their businesses for lack of a buyer. These transitions of small and medium businesses will likely result in a large-scale job losses, a decrease in local ownership, and growth in economic inequality. But fortunately, in places like Durham, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Santa Clara, cities are working with community partners to prevent their long-standing businesses from closing for good for lack of a succession plan. And cities are not alone. States have also made employee ownership a priority. For example, in Colorado, they established a revolving loan fund to assist transitions to employee ownership. In Iowa, they passed a state capital gains tax exemption for transitions to employee ownership. And in Massachusetts, they created a state employee ownership center to provide free support for succession planning. And at the federal level, the Main Street Employee Ownership Act was passed with strong bipartisan support in 2018, which, among other supports, directs the Small Business Administration to assist business owners in converting their companies to employee ownership through outreach and training programs. So what I want to leave with is this. The small business closure crisis will be the largest generational wealth transfer in history. Thoughtful policy and collaboration can ensure that this wealth is not further consolidated, but actually goes to workers, families, and communities, stabilizing local economies to foster broad-based economic recovery. It will take all the tools in the toolbox, but worker cooperatives can be a solution, and cities, states, and the federal government are working to increase support for transitions to employee ownership. And those of us on the panel today are working together to address this challenge at the local, state, and federal levels. And I encourage anyone interested in this work to connect with us afterwards. So for now, I'll pass it over to Kirk Vartan from A Slice of New York to speak about his personal experience transitioning his business to employee ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Zen. That was great.
Well, hello. My name is
Kirk, and let me just single out Kirk because he was so helpful with Kevin in helping us draft this legislation, has been working with us for the past year on it. So thank you, Kirk.
Well, thank you, Representative Khanna. I just appreciate you holding this discussion today. It's great to see all these resources involved and pulling in the same direction and seeing the alignment at the federal, state, and local level. So it's really great. My name is Kirk Vartan. I'm the general manager and founder of A Slice of New York, headquartered in the city of Santa Clara with a second location in Sunnyvale. And I'm just here to share you a little bit about my background, how we started, and why we thought the worker cooperative model worked for us, and then just share a couple stories about how this pandemic has affected our business. So my background is in corporate. I have, when I was in New York, I was at NBC and GE, and when I came out here to work at Cisco, one of the key things that those corporations instilled in me is it's all about the people. The people are everything. And when we went to go start our business, and Margaret went to start our business, we're like, how can we have this employee ownership model? Because you always got stock options, just these little shares, but it was something, you felt like ownership. So we did things like annual reviews, transparency in our financials, bonuses, always having our mission, vision, and goals clearly communicated at our company meetings, and then sharing strategies about how finances work and how to make that benefit the employees and the workers in the business, and making those trade-offs on how do you make a decision in the best interest of the people and the business so you can maintain that stability. One of the most important things for us in making this decision to a worker cooperative, it's about the culture and the team. The team needs to be able, our team is inherently empowered to make decisions and are autonomous, and it's built on a culture of respect. And what we've been able to do here is, in this transition, there was a lot of changes that needed to take place in this kind of COVID challenge right now. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of them, but we had just dozens of structural changes we did to our business to react, and we were 7 to 10 days ahead of what the county typically, even in their orders, did. We were proactive. But I'm going to share two stories with you. The first is one that Mayor Gillmor was a part of on March 20th, Friday, March 20th. One of our new employees was having a real hard time with the pandemic. She was very anxious and kind of panicked about working there. And so the next day on Saturday morning, she actually resigned, and she just couldn't handle the challenges that were being presented. So I spent about an hour on the phone with her just to find out what can we do to make an environment that's better and that she would feel safer in and feel comfortable in. And it was, the biggest thing was around people, like the people interacting and just being close and not having clarity on what to do. This is, before masks were really pervasive. We started doing that at the end of March, but this was, March 21st. And so the net result is we decided to, I decided to lock the front door in our Santa Clara business and terminate selling slices, because those brought people into our business and kind of had a bad behavior for kind of, having people be distant and kind of be at arm's length. And that was a big financial decision, because slices are like 40% of our business, 35% of our business. We did this though, quickly, deliberately, on a Saturday afternoon, locked the door and did business out of our transaction window. And I didn't go through a committee. I didn't have to go to the board. There wasn't a decision like collective, should we do this? It's like, no, I'm the operations manager. I'm the general manager. I make that call. And I bring that up because I've heard some challenges about, well, how can you operate with a committee and how do you make decisions? And the reality is, operations, you make decisions. And so that's just really, I just want to be really clear about that. Operations are very separate from governance, which is the next little story I want to share, which is this happened last month. our team's been going 5 months solid, just nonstop, lots of pressure, lots of changes. And it's really starting to wear on our team. So looking around, we're like, I go to the board and I say, look, we need to take a break, like a real break. And I pitched the idea of taking a week off, closing both businesses down, having a mandatory paid week off for the team. And with financial implications, it's massive financial implications. Employees are 45% of our expense as a business. But everybody was on board. We did this, we communicated this with the entire team, and we shut the business down because the team was the priority, not the profits. Profits are important, of course, but the team was what makes the profits happen. And in our belief as a business, and even before this, you take care of the people take care of the business, and the other stuff works itself out if you can take care of those people. So I wanted to take a minute to share those two stories about what's important to us. It's all about the people. And if nothing else, a co-op really hones that vision. My job is to make sure our team is taken care of. And so I just appreciate you letting us share our story, and I'll pass this off to Hilary.
Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you so much, Kirk, and thank you, Representative Khanna and Tom Pike, for organizing this session. So I'm a co-founder of an organization called Project Equity, and let me get my slides properly shared here. Our mission is, oh, that's not right. I'm so sorry. Our mission at Project Equity is to foster economic resiliency in low-income communities by scaling worker ownership. And we do this by working with strong local businesses like A Slice of New York to help them transition to worker cooperatives and other forms of broad-based employee ownership like ESOPs. Now, Zen did a terrific job of speaking to the many benefits of employee ownership for workers, for communities, and for businesses. And I'm going to share some perspective from the business owner point of view. At Project Equity, we raise awareness, we do a lot of business outreach, we partner with groups like the others on this call at many levels, and we also directly work with business owners to take them through transitions. So we talk to hundreds of business owners per year, and we know that they care about the success of their business. As Kirk put it so eloquently, they care about their people and they care about their legacies. So some of the data points that are useful to them is to know that often the profit margins are significantly higher. This 8.5% data point here is from a report that the Democracy at Work Institute put out a couple of years on worker cooperatives. And several studies from the National Center for Employee Ownership also show that employee-owned companies create growth in sales and in employment. And not only are there more jobs, but they're often significantly better jobs. So one study showed that employee owners' wages were 53% higher, and their household net worth was almost double that of non-employee owners. So if you're interested in understanding some of this data, please see a recent report on our website called The Case for Employee Ownership that aggregates dozens of studies to put more meat to this argument. But the upshot is what Representative Khanna said, that employee ownership really is a win-win solution. And as Zen described, today we are facing a dual crisis of COVID-19, which is an existential crisis for so many small businesses, and the silver tsunami. And it turns out that baby boomers, who are retiring at the rate of 10,000 per day, own 2.3 million businesses that employ people. They employ about 25 million people across the country. So without a succession plan, many of those businesses are closing, as Zen pointed out. In the Great Recession, private equity firms bought a lot of businesses cheap. And so we know that's going to happen again as well. Acquisition is an option for some businesses, and it often leads to job loss and greater wealth consolidation. Only about 15% of family businesses have a family member to pass a business on to. So of these four options, employee ownership is really the only one that checks all of the boxes, which it genuinely does. It helps to preserve the legacy that a business owner has built over dozens of years, several decades in many cases. It keeps those employees in those jobs and bringing their best to the companies that they have often invested years of their life in, and continues to serve customers in the community. And generally, business owners will get market value for their company, and in some cases, there are significant tax benefits, as Ben mentioned. So let me briefly talk through what a business owner can expect. And then those of you who talk to and work with business owners, what you might want to encourage them to consider. So first and foremost, education is key, as Representative Khanna said. The first thing a business owner needs to do is hear about employee ownership. It's often said in this movement that it's the best kept secret, and we want to turn it into business as usual. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that people hear about it, education. And when a business owner wants to take a look at the possibility, the first thing that Project Equity and other organizations can help them do is analyze the feasibility. And that process really looks at their future cash flow, the debt capacity, because most of these transactions are financed through an outside loan, often from a community development financial institution. And so we'll look at what might the potential sale price be, what debt capacity will the business have, and what other gaps will need to be addressed, for example, in management capabilities if the owner is leaving, and employee education and engagement. When we do take a company through the process, it usually takes about 6 to 12 months. And it's about the same amount of time that other ways of selling your business might take. So as Kirk mentioned, we'll help a company design their governance and the membership. How does one become a member of the cooperative? What is the role of the board of directors? Is management going to change at all? Operations might very much stay the same, but we'll look at all of those things, find the financing, close the sale. And then afterwards, at Project Equity, we have the pleasure of continuing to work with many of these companies for 2 years or longer, as we did with the Slice of New York. So one thing everyone in this conversation can do is educate and be what we like to call a candidate spotter. So keep a lookout for those businesses that you frequent and love, for those companies that might want to consider employee ownership. And one of the really important things to look for is a company that has been in good financial health for some time. The transition strategy is the best fit for businesses that have been around a while and are fairly mature, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And even if they're in crisis with COVID-19, I want to point out that we don't see this as a strategy for rescuing failing businesses, although sometimes that can happen. But first and foremost, this is a strategy for supporting strong businesses in getting through a crisis, creating greater employee engagement, and aligned incentives for the future. I'll close by just talking a little bit about what folks on the call and others can do to support this. Hopefully you see yourself somewhere in this left-hand column if you're with a Chamber of Commerce or an SBDC, education, candidate spotting, providing complementary services. And I'll wrap up by saying that the government officials on this call are true champions and truly inspiring to the rest of us who have been working on this issue for some time. The policy efforts that are happening at every level of government have immense potential to help bring this work to the mainstream. And awareness raising is a critical role for government as well. So in a second, I'll hand it off to Mayor Lisa Gillmor in Santa Clara. Project Equity is partnering with Santa Clara, and others on this call will be supporting this effort as well, to raise awareness about employee ownership, starting with understanding what business retention risk there may be in the city of Santa Clara. We've done similar work with Berkeley, San Francisco, Long Beach. We're starting a new partnership with the County of LA, working with Supervisor Hilda Solis. And what we're finding is similar to what we've just found in the data study we'll be releasing soon with Santa Clara, which is that the businesses that are more than 20 years old, in Santa Clara, it turns out there are more than 1,100 of them, they have outsized benefits to the local economy, often 60% or more of the local business revenue, and often as many as 1 in 3 jobs. So in Santa Clara, that's 20,000 employees. So we're so grateful for the efforts of Mayor Gillmor and others who are supporting this work in the city of Santa Clara. And with that, I'll hand it off to you, Mayor Gillmor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilary. Great presentation. And I'm excited about our mayor, a fantastic mayor, Lisa Gillmor, who's been a champion on this issue and so many issues since I've been in Congress. So I appreciate her taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Congressman Khanna, and thank you to you and your staff for hosting this for us. It's an important issue for us in Santa Clara, but thank you for working so hard in Washington for the city of Santa Clara. You know how much we appreciate it, and you're always thinking about us. So thank you, Congressman Khanna. So I was introduced to the worker ownership model by, of course, Kirk Vartan, who introduced us to the agri-hood concept in Santa Clara. So of course he's going to introduce us to worker co-ops, things that I wasn't familiar with. But what he did was he made us become aware that our city could develop our own strategy for assisting and retaining small businesses. So with little knowledge of the mechanics of how worker cooperatives work, but with a desire to find more creative ways to help our businesses, we made the decision in March of 2019 to start at a council committee level at our marketing and economic development committee. And we invited Kirk to come make a presentation, and he had some experts there as well. The stakeholders on our marketing and economic development committee are groups such as the Chamber of Commerce, Santa Clara University, Mission College. And to be more specific, Mission College, our community college, was really excited about getting involved. And they talked about wanting to be able to host classes and to offer training for potential, business transitions. So with a resounding recommendation of the committee, with that included a seed money recommendation, we went to our city council in July of last year, and we had a study session. So we listened to many experts in the field, some who are here today or their organizations were here today. And I want to tell you that it was really important at that time that the way the presentation was delivered, and the way they delivered it was to the city council and the public at a very high level and easy to understand fashion, because that's, I think, one of the takeaways that I have from this is you've got to make it easy to understand, both for the council and the public, probably more for the council. But there was also a testimony from a couple of successful businesses in the Bay Area that had transitioned. I think it was a bakery in Berkeley and a pie company in Union City. But the most compelling testimony we had at our study session was from a young man in his 20s. And I'll never forget him because he had the most beautifully colored hair, and he came up and he was just full of energy, and his name was Ren, and he was a worker owner of a Slice of New York pizza. And, talking about worker ownership is very interesting, but for our city council to hear from how this young man's life was changed by having the opportunity to own a part of a business really helped convince our city council to not only unanimously support the idea of moving forward with the initiative, but in November of last year, we allocated $100,000 in seed money to have to get the initiative started. So we had lots of information that we received after these meetings, and there was a lot of votes and council support. And even in January of this year, the council confirmed our support of the Worker Co-op initiative at our goal setting and our study session, and we made it a priority for the city. So our council continued to express support by adopting a resolution in March to support worker co-ops. And then the pandemic hit. And I think we were probably a couple months, a little late there. The pandemic hit and our focus turned to helping the communities in other ways. But when you consider that it took our city less than 9 months from the first discussion at a city level, at a committee level, to full council support with funding for this initiative, I think it's pretty amazing. But what I've also learned is that worker cooperatives are complex and elusive, and they are not in the wheelhouse of city government. And they're not supposed to be, but they're not. And so even though there is the political will to push something like this through as much as you can, there's still a hesitation and a hesitation to proceed. So it's important to really recognize, and I want to stress the need for city government, and that this is what we're doing now. I think we just engaged Hilary's group to help us, but it's really important to get outside agencies to help your city through this process, and other community partners to help you through. We can't do it on our own, and we've tried, but it's really not possible. So you can ask our staff how persistent some of us on the council have been trying to move this along, but for good reason. And I think Hilary touched on, our situation in Santa Clara. She's just given us some data, but we have over 6,500 small businesses in Santa Clara. 1,100 of them, as she mentioned, are over 20 years old. 1 in 3 Santa Clara workers come from small businesses. And most importantly, they generate about 35% of our sales tax revenue. So it's important for cities. We have legacy businesses that we have lost over the years. And for those who have been in this area, businesses like Wilson's Bakery, Vesuvio's Pizza, By the Bucket Restaurant, and we have businesses that we never want to see leave the community, like Yuki Sushi, China Sticks, Fiorello's, Mission City Grill, and of course, the famous Stan's Donuts in Santa Clara. You all heard about it, I'm sure. We never want them to go anywhere, but we're fearful. So we call ourselves in Santa Clara the center of what's possible. We have a diverse population and a diverse portfolio of assets. And our success, though, was built on the back of these small businesses. And we really can't let them down, especially now during this pandemic when they need us the most. And we're not alone, because many cities face what we're facing right now. So our goal is to create a package for the businesses and give them the tools necessary, a tool kit to have them create their own worker co-op in their businesses that they have worked so hard to create. And we want to have some kind of a simple employee ownership model for other cities to use. So we're creating it now, and then we can share this and spread it for others so that they can retain their own community businesses, because they're just like we are. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have our model program soon with our solution as quickly as we can, politically push to get this going. But anyways, thank you very much for inviting me. I want to now pass this over to Assemblymember Ash Kalra to talk about the state of California's plan to help worker ownership. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Gillmor. Thank you for your leadership and vision in championing this and being a model with Santa Clara. And thank you for your constant source of partnership and counsel on so many issues. I'm a big fan, and I appreciate all you do for the city. And I'm so honored that we're going to have our Assembly member, Ash Kalra, a true champion, a progressive champion in the Assembly. He is one of the strongest voices, has always been since he was on City Council, for workers' rights and for workers' issues. And I know he's playing a leadership role on this issue at the state level. So thank you, Assemblymember Kalra.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I think that everyone would agree that we're so lucky as we advocate in different positions and different forms for worker cooperatives to have in our own backyard our very own Congress member who's one of the biggest champions in DC in Congress. And so I think the symmetry here and the sense of purpose that we all share with you on this issue really certainly empowers me and inspires me. So thank you, Congressman. And as all of you know, it's been a long journey. And I think Hilary may have alluded to the fact that many of you have been working on this for many, many years. And some of us elected officials have been learning over the last couple of years and getting on the worker cooperative train, so it were. But I really want to thank all of you that have been working at this for so many years, Kirk and others to really educate because we're still in that phase of educating both the public as well as elected leaders on the value of worker cooperatives. And especially as someone that cares so much about workers, there's an opportunity here that I think we shouldn't miss. And the state of California has done some work in this arena. In 2015, the California Worker Cooperative Act was passed. We've done some modest assistance for worker cooperatives by simplifying the incorporation process, but there's no doubt we can do more. And that's part of the reason why last year, as chair of the Assembly Labor and Employment Committee, I held the informational hearing on worker cooperatives and shared prosperity. And I'm so excited to continue that discussion. And even as part of the discussion last year, not only did we have other Assembly members, but Project Equity was part of it, and Kirk and others that really lended a voice. And it's great to hear from Zen as well about the national kind of work that's being done. But we have all the right people and partners in place. The question is, why is it important for us to actually go down this road? And I think that there's so much more that can be done to expand the use of worker cooperatives, such as providing educational and technical assistance, as well as developing a support system to help establish worker cooperatives. But then we have to answer the question of why. I think to really motivate and inspire folks to join this movement, right? And even before COVID, being here in the Bay Area, and I know Lisa can speak to this in Santa Clara for certain. In San Jose, you see it throughout the Bay Area. We have so many small businesses, so many restaurants, mom and pop restaurants. Many are immigrant owned, that are, the parents, so to speak, are getting to retirement age, and their kids have gone on to college and doing these great things and don't necessarily want to take over the business. But they have everybody that they need to take over right in front of them, working as dishwashers, as servers, as managers, as cooks. They're right there, and they're willing and they're able if we give them the right tools. Now, someone may ask, why are you doing this in the middle of COVID? Aren't there other priorities? The reality is that because of COVID, it's even more important than ever for us to focus on worker cooperatives. Unfortunately, we know that so many small businesses are going to struggle to reopen. There are so many workers sitting at home right now that wish that their businesses, the businesses they work for, could reopen. And in some cases, the owners are going to have to walk away, and it's very sad to see. But there may be an opportunity for us to revive those businesses with a model that truly shares the prosperity, allows those that have the expertise to operate the business to really be front and center. And so the last thing I'll say is that there is no, as Mayor Gillmor was talking about, the cities can only do so much. Well, the states can only do so much. The federal government can only do so much. None of us have the silver bullet. But the fact of the matter is we do need everybody on board. And so having the Congressmember pushing federal legislation is critical. I will continue to do what I can at the state level, but we can't be successful unless cities like Santa Clara and Mayor Gillmor and others get on board with supporting their local businesses, because they have that direct connection to those businesses, and they'll be able to identify better than others which businesses could really benefit from this kind of transition. And so it does take all of us, but I'm so excited to be part of the team, and I'm just grateful to be part of this conversation, and I look forward to any questions or further conversation we have today.
Thank you, Assemblymember. That was great. That was terrific, and appreciate your pushing this again at the state level. Tom, I think
Congressman, it's your turn. Give us an update on the bill.
Great. Well, I don't want to take too long. I'd given a sense of this earlier, and Kirk and Kevin Fox on my team have been working on this. The bill does some very simple things. One, it incentivizes businesses to become worker cooperatives. It creates a fund for education outreach so we understand how to create more worker cooperatives. It creates a fund so that we can get loans to worker cooperatives, and as they transition, as they create these businesses, and it creates an entire fund in the federal government to really promote the transition to worker cooperatives. So those are the key aspects of the bill. We are going to be introducing it, and look forward then to working to get this passed. And I really think this is both, as the speakers have said, given COVID, given the silver tsunami, the confluence of those, this is the time we have to create the funding mechanism, the incentives, and the education to get worker cooperatives becoming a prominent model.
Great. And Congressman, we have some questions that are in the chat section of for Zoom. But one question up front is that Sandra had asked, what support look like in Congress, whether you're going to get bipartisan support. How do you think about that? And then after that, maybe if we can go to some of the questions in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd love for Kevin, if he's on the call, to chime in at some point as well, because he's really led this effort. The support, I think, is promising. I think this cuts across party. It's not a partisan issue. I think it's as speakers have said, it's good for workers, but it's also good for business. There's an understanding of the demographic trends and the silver tsunami. So we have had good luck with some Republican offices and Democratic offices, and our goal with this bill would really be to try to pass it. It's not just a messaging bill. Tom?
Great. Yeah, let's go to one question from Ann Hurdy. It
I
says,
think Kirk wants to also chime in. Maybe let's get Kirk.
oh, okay. Kurt?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there was one of the questions. Yeah, I was just queuing up. I just saw some of the questions on there. One of the
Yeah,
things that
go for it.
someone mentioned was, what, maybe it worked for us in terms of, because I'm still staying in the business as general manager. It doesn't have to be the case. I chose, we didn't do this so I could retire, or Margaret and I could retire. We did this because this is what we wanted to do. But the original owner doesn't have to stay in the business. They can exit the business. And the question is, so what makes it you think that the employees are going to do what's in the best interest of the business and not in the short-term goals for themselves? And I would give you an example. We did a surcharge on our products right now because of COVID, because we eliminated all ability to tip. So that is about 20 to 25% of the income of our crew. So in order to make that up, we did a surcharge. And originally that was going all to the employees, 100%. We took off the taxes that we had to, but everything else went to the employees. And further, as things went forward the last couple months, we had a Zoom meeting. We have our company meetings together, kind of group meetings. And I brought this forward. It's like, look, we still have our increases we did at the beginning of the year that we haven't actually paid for yet, because we were going to do a menu increase on slices, and then we cut slices in March. And so we don't have any way to recover that revenue. And so we put this forward to all of them. It was about 20 people, 25 people on the call, and said, listen, I'd like to suggest that we split or share some of that revenue, because we need to pay for payroll for the things that we haven't paid that bill yet. And that's still here. And I just want to hear how you guys feel about that. We can do, 60-40, 50-50, whatever you think is, 60 being for the employees, 40% for the business, but anything we do will help. And anything that we can take care of, like in that manner, will help the business. And we had multiple people say, you know what, we would rather be conservative. Let's do 50-50 and make sure the business stays whole to take care of the business, so that we have jobs going forward, so that we can protect ourselves and our business. And this was not just members. These are members and non-members in the business that are saying, we would rather have a little bit of sacrifice right now, because we believe that this will take care of us long term. And I think if you're honest and transparent with your finances and what they call open book management, and you're transparent with all the issues that are going on, that people, these are smart people, these are good people that understand reality. And if you share reality with them, they will make decisions that are not just in their best interest, but in the big picture, and care for each other.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirk. And to take that specific example and maybe draw some other connections to that at a more of an idea perspective here. Employees are the owners, and so they have to wear the hat of a worker. They have to wear the hat of a board member, and they sometimes have to be thinking in terms of a manager. And because you're having to put yourself in different kinds of decision-making questions, you really are thinking holistically about what it means to run a business, what it also means to work in this business. And I think that lends itself to a process by which you do have to kind of uncover all angles of the question and figure out what is the optimal decision that can be made. And just because you form a worker-owned business doesn't mean that automatically everyone's get really good at making those types of decisions and wearing those hats. Let me just say, it does take a little bit of training, a little bit of education, support. And I think some of the best support for worker cooperatives is not just helping them get formed, also providing ongoing education support so that our worker owners can be really skilled at wearing those hats. And that's offered through service providers that can continue to work with businesses such as Project Equity. That's also networks of worker-owned businesses, such as the network of Bay Area worker cooperatives or the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, who again can connect worker owners to worker owners. So we're always constantly learning and building our skills together. And I think that is what it means to have democracy in our workplace. You don't ever arrive at democracy. It's always something you continue to work on. And I think that requires continuing education, and again keeping all the different hats in mind as we try to operate a business.
Another question specifically related to the fact that we've we're in the COVID era, and a question from Mo Kingston is, can you talk a bit more about how you see co-ops as a solution for supporting small businesses affected by COVID? We know the silver tsunami with the baby boomers that are going to be retiring, but it seems that things have really expedited. Has there been an impact or any comments from anybody on that?
I would just mention that we know that there are going to be a lot of businesses that don't survive our COVID crisis, and it's really shameful and sad to see. But there is a way, I think, that especially if we bring the workers together with the management, with the ownership, the current ownership model, that with some assistance from government, and it could be in different forms, there is an opportunity to try to save some of these businesses. And that's partially why we need more stimulus and help. And I know there's something that Congressman kind of constantly pushes for from the federal government. But the reality is that there is an opportunity, a COVID opportunity that, frankly, even before COVID, I think would have been harder to make the case. With COVID, I think we have the ability to make even a stronger case that, look, we need to get these businesses back up. We need to, and in many cases, it's through the worker cooperative model that could be done much more efficiently, effectively, and quickly than under a standard model where you're awaiting the return of the economy in a way that may have upheld the business before. But to Hilary's point, it's a lot easier if it's businesses that were already stable before COVID. And so if there's a business that was already struggling and COVID hit, that'll be hard lift. But if it's a successful business model, like a slice of New York pizza, or someone that has shown that, hey, we can be profitable, and then they shift to a worker cooperative model, that's where I think the post-COVID opportunity exists.
Can I jump in and say something also to add on to that? Our businesses now in Santa Clara are suffering from many different threats. Of course, the public health threat and the orders that they have to comply with, but it's the employees not being able to sustain them, not being able to sustain their business, not getting relief from their landlords. And I'm finding right now is one of the biggest issues that I'm getting calls all the time wanting me to help negotiate with their landlords. I said, okay, I can only go so far. But the city, of Santa Clara, we've done a lot of things during this pandemic that we have never done before. We're feeding seniors on the weekend, children's on the weekend. We are giving small business grants so that businesses can have a little bridge just to get them to survive through this. So if we can show them that there's light at the end of the tunnel, we'll help you as much as we can. And this is where we look to the state and the federal government as well to help these small business. Well, they need it to survive. Then we can get them in the worker, co-op model. So they won't, it'll be easier for them to keep their employees and, for all the reasons that everybody talked about. So I think we have a more serious crisis at this moment than people realize, in terms of everyone wants to help, but then, for instance, you'll go to the landlord and they're not gonna forgive rent or defer it. They want it no matter what. So I think the city, we're doing as much as we can, but we need help from the state and the federal government as well to make sure they survive, and that's the key for us.
I'd love to add, if it's okay to jump on that, Tom, briefly. Two things. One is that I couldn't agree more with what Ash said, and it's a bit of a cliche, but that old saying about the Chinese character for crisis is also opportunity. I feel like we are seeing this in this moment, in that policymakers like yourselves and many others are really open to thinking about new ways to support small businesses, and to thinking about employee ownership not as some niche thing or cooperatives as something off on the side that you may or may not have heard of, but as a true solution, not a silver bullet, but a viable solution. And some of the things I think we can think about now that have been kind of below the radar are, where are there things that government is already doing to which there are not specific barriers for worker cooperatives or employee-owned companies or companies transitioning, like the iBank loan guarantee in California? How could we educate, take away any perceived or real barriers, and make sure those guarantees get to companies that want to pursue employee ownership? And we've also been advancing some proposals, and Project Equity is working on a new fund that, in addition to supporting employee ownership transitions, could support business continuity loans to companies that are committing to an employee ownership transition that could be forgiven, like the PP loans were, when they meet that criteria of starting in on employee ownership. And just educating folks about the importance of employee engagement and how when you share ownership, that's the deepest form of engagement. So I think at a tactical level, it can be a strategy truly for engaging folks. And the data does show that employee-owned companies are 3 to 6 times less likely to lay off employees. Even in the recession, there have been some interesting calculations about the savings to the federal government in the dozens of billions of dollars in the Great Recession due to employee-owned companies not laying off workers that would then depend on government support. So watching for those things, being data-driven, learning about the facts of the value of business retention, the value of employee ownership.
One question, and I think all the people on the workers cooperative side are going to jump up on this one, from Donna West. It says, is this for food businesses only? What other types of businesses there are? And I know there's a lot. So maybe if you can kind of give a little overview of the different types so that people are listening don't feel like maybe they're limited.
Yeah, maybe I
I'm
can
happy to-
start, we can build.
Go ahead, Ben.
I can do a plug for one of our local ones, Smart Yards Co-op. Elizabeth Sarmiento might be on watching us here, but they do transitions from lawns to more environmentally friendly landscapes. It's it's a landscaping yard yard transition worker co-op doing very well, and that's one example that shows a worker co-op could be any type of business, really.
Yeah, I think that's right. And to build on that, we see, so worker ownership can work in any industry. We see it concentrated right now in service and retail sectors, and particularly in industries that focus on care. So we see it's the largest worker cooperative in the country is based in Bronx, called the Cooperative Home Care Associates. Something like 2,000 people work there. They're not only are they really successful as a business, but they're also helping shift industry standards. So in care industries where the quality of the work really matters every single day, the worker ownership difference makes a huge impact. You also see it, of course, in kind of lower margin, high labor kind of industries, such as landscaping, right? Such industries like that, where it does matter that everyone shows up. But that's not the only industries. I'll say that, and I'll maybe pass it to Hilary to build on that.
Sure. Yeah, agree with everything that's been said, and would just add that we have an initiative in manufacturing. We're doing a pilot project in Milwaukee and work in LA County and city, specifically around manufacturing. And that is a very strong sector in Santa Clara as well. So it's one of the things that we'll be talking with Mayor Gillmor and her staff about is enticing the manufacturing companies in Santa Clara in this direction. And also in the East Bay in the next few months, we are working with companies in logistics, warehousing, and distribution that will be completing their transition to a worker co-op and another one in tech as well.
Quick plug for Teamworks in there too. They've been a worker cooperative and they actually have a development arm to help create more cleaning cooperatives in the county here. So it's a big shout out to David Smathersmore.
Great. And, Kirk, as long as we have you, I was interested in a question of, this is from Micah Case, and it's saying, does the co-op structure make it more likely that the company will put employees at the front? Also, one fear is the business owner is the firm might not run as efficiently as it becomes a co-op. It doesn't seem to be the case for you, but what drives employees to make decisions that are best for their future growth? And how do others kind of just see successful models in reality working on this transition?
So the thing that again, to me it's about a culture fit. You have to have the right culture in the organization to be successful. If in ours we have a very empowered, very autonomous yet very team focused and respect-based culture. We're very open and transparent. And to me, if you have those things, you can't just say, okay, tomorrow we're going to be a worker cooperative, let's go do it. You need to bring the team with you. When we started this path with Project Equity 4 years ago, we created a team of 6 of us, employees and Marguerite and myself, and we went monthly up to, and sometimes multiple times a month, to start to understand the culture of what it takes to convert, what does it mean to be an owner, and to bring people along with you. You can't just throw that on and say, okay, now it's time to be governors of your company. Now it's time to figure out the budget and look at the balance sheet. I mean, it's like people don't even know what those things are. What is a P&L? And so being able to instruct people on those things and being able to bring people along in that capacity is critical. And I think that's how you become successful at this. Again, you don't have to have an original owner as part of the co-op. You don't have to do that. We do that. Some do, some don't. Some people just see it as an exit strategy, and that's fine. That's where I target a lot of my time, is what I call the low-hanging fruit, is the people that want to transition out of their business. What is your exit strategy? What is your succession plan? If you don't have one, you better start thinking of one, because you're not going to live forever. Nobody does. And that's true for your business too. So looking at that as the way to enter in and get more of these kind of models in place is where I think it makes the most sense. And they have an incentive because they understand their business. They can impart their knowledge over the years, what made them successful, and then start to work with people that care. You get 2 or 3 really critical people in the business that care and want it. That's how you start. You don't start with everybody. You tell everybody, but you extract who are the right people to create that core team to then mature it and go forward. That's how I think you become successful in making this transition happen. And the time, like for me personally, our business, it took a little bit of time. Hearing 6 to 12 months seems like a long time. I always try and push back on this. We need to make that shorter. It needs to be shorter, it needs to be more efficient, but where it's going to be functional. It can't just be throw the switch and off you go. That's not a setup for success.
Great, thanks. We have just a couple more minutes left. I had just one kind of wrap-up question and then leave it to the Congressman with concluding remarks. And the one question would be, if people are interested, how can they get more involved? And also for the Worker Cooperative panelists, what are your calls to action to the governmental representatives and our local officials? Maybe either Zen or Hilary could jump in.
Sure. I'll start with the calls to action. I'll just start with that. I think the Mayor Lisa and the Assemblymember Ash, Kalra, I think had really made it clear that, look, this isn't something that is well known. It's a worker ownership is a new model for many people, but cities have a role and states have a role in supporting economic development, right? And how they support economic development is a matter of, like, what are the priorities? And I think in the case of the city of Santa Clara and again, growing in the city of California, employee ownership is being recognized as again, an economic development priority. It's one tool out of many tools. So we're not saying it's a panacea to everything. What we are saying it is, as Hilary mentioned, kind of the best kept secret. It can be really useful in a lot of different situations. So the call to action is really just, connect with folks on this panel to learn more about how you can do this work. Connect with the mayor to understand what it took to kind of understand this internally to the city. Connect with groups like Democracy Work Institute, Project Equity, A Slice of New York, even, to understand what does it take to actually work with a business owner, help them explore the option of selling to their employees, and what's that ongoing support looks like. Every city, every ecosystem is going to have a different set of elements ready to build on. And I think the job of all of us here is figure out how to insert and integrate employee ownership into existing programs that support small businesses. So if you're already serve small businesses in a chamber of commerce, have this conversation about succession planning. Maybe one of the options is employee ownership. Connect to someone who knows a little bit about that to provide that support. If you're a city providing small business services, maybe think about adding something on your website or your toolkit around worker ownership. I think there's many ways to integrate it into existing programs. And there are a lot of examples, and the work that I do with cities across the country in my fellowship program, we've built a community of practice where we can basically steal ideas from each other and adapt it to a unique context, so that the work in Durham and the work in San Francisco and the work in Atlanta can connect and learn from each other. And I think if you want to learn more about, from a city perspective, just what other places are doing, we'd be more than happy to talk about that as well.
Great, thanks. We could talk all day. This is a great subject. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Maybe Congressman Khanna, if you'd like to wrap it up, and then we can let people go out and think and work on worker cooperatives.
I just want to thank everyone on the call. Thank you. A special thanks to Kirk, of course, who's helped drive this process, and to all the excellent panelists and our experts, and to the mayor, Lisa Gillmor, and Assemblymember Kalra, and to you, Tom, for pulling this all together, and Kevin Fox. Let's continue to work to make this strong legislation. Let's continue to work to get as many co-sponsors in Congress. And let's continue to have our district be the models. And if you can continue to share good stories of worker co-ops, we'll highlight that on our social media and in Congress. So thank you so much for your vision and bringing this to our attention. And I'm really honored to be able to lead this issue in Congress.
Thank you. Thanks, Congressman. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Representative Khanna. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, everyone in the audience.